On this episode, I make an epic 20-game trade, and I meet up with some friends as we talk collecting and unbelievable collections on the day one of them receives the final game for his Super Nintendo collection. Join me on a quest for all things retro. So my friend Curtis from GirlfriendVS has been dangerously close to completing his entire Super Nintendo collection for a couple years. But one of the games he desperately needed was Super Turrican 2, and I happened to already have that. So he knew I was rebuilding my NES collection, and I knew he needed that, and so we made a deal. But also, 2 weeks ago, I got to be there on the day he got the final game for his collection. So now he has the entire collection. And so I thought that would be a good opportunity to see his entire collection and also to just talk about everything about collecting from start to finish, about that process of completing a collection. But more on that later. First of all, let's just talk about this trade. Now, Clu Clu Land is a weird little game with a weird little title. In Japan, it's actually called Kuru Kuru, which means around and around. And I guess Kuru Kuru kind of sounds like Clu Clu, maybe. But anyway, they called it Clu Clu Land in English. Basically, the premise is you're a balloon fish named Bubbles, and as you swim, which is weird because the background's always black, it doesn't even look like water, but as you swim, you have to grab on these little pegs, and that's the only way you can turn. And as you turn, you'll reveal these hidden rupee looking things, and they actually look like rupees because they were designed for this game, and when they were making Zelda, they took the exact same design and used it in Zelda. But it's an interesting game, kind of quirky, but actually, I kind of like it. 10-yard fight in volleyball. Look, I like to be positive about these games, but 10-yard fight might be the worst game I've ever played. Maybe if you have some sort of nostalgia for it, you might enjoy it, but there is no comparison to this and Tecmo Bowl. I mean, it's bad. You move slow, it's awkward, the sound is bad. I'm not a fan. Volleyball. It's so difficult to return the volley. You hit the ball up, you see the little shadow, but it moves so fast you can't possibly get it in time. Maybe I just really am not good at it. Another thing about this, I guess this board was thicker, but when I put it in the AVS to capture footage, I couldn't get it out. My AVS almost became a permanent volleyball plug and play, which would be like I don't know, like the 7th layer of hell. As far as black box games go, pro wrestling is probably one of the best. There's a lot of attention to detail by having like a referee and a cameraman. It's known for the phrase, "winner is you," the bad translation. 6 international fighters that are unique, like the Amazon and his brain-scratching, head-biting, and Starman with his star kick. There's all the little features like that that give it some variety and personality for a black box game. That's pretty impressive. But one thing that made the buttons, when you're limited to only 2 buttons, it's difficult to come up with a lot you can do. And in most games, it's just kind of like you punch or you kick. Like, what else? But in this game, they created this idea of being in a different state. Like when you're locking arms, the buttons do something different. When you're running, the buttons do something different. But then you could throw people out of the ring, you can jump off the top of the ropes. There's a lot of complexity, and it's a really awesome game. I can't say this about every game, but
that belongs in a game room.
Urban Champion. Look, this game's not good. Basically, one button you punch, the other button you punch harder. You're trying to knock back the enemy, knock them off the sidewalk. It's really not that great. It's pretty monotonous. But it's very interesting to note it was produced by Miyamoto. Now, what do Wrecking Crew and GUMSHOE have in common? They were both actually developed by Yoshio Sakamoto, who created Super Metroid. In Wrecking Crew, you play as Mario, and he does everything. He golfs, he's a doctor, he's a plumber. He's also apparently in construction. Now, the game itself, I can't figure out what the heck I'm really supposed to do. All I know is I was breaking things and a snake was coming after me. Basically, you have to try to find an exit, I think, and there's like 100 levels. It's also in the programmable game series, which meant you could create levels, but there's no save, there's no password, so once you turn it off, it's gone. Now, GUMSHOE is actually a light gun game, and I don't really have a great way to play that right now. My memory of it is that it's not too bad. But weirdly enough, remember Holly Robinson from 21 Jump Street? She said in Nintendo Power this was her favorite game. GUMSHOE is my all-time favorite game, says Holly enthusiastically. Really? GUMSHOE? Page 91 has a list of 112 NES games, and you know what? GUMSHOE isn't even there. Balloon Fight. Let's face it, Balloon Fight is just joust with balloons. But that doesn't mean it's not fun. It's a fun game by yourself, but it's even more fun if you play two-player. The game, interesting, was actually developed by Satoru Iwata, former Nintendo president who passed away recently. It's a great game, though. I enjoy it. Good job. Good job, Satoru. 1942 from early Capcom. It's got that grid-based design. This game is interesting. First of all, I mean, I like shooters, and it's a vertical shooter, scrolling shooter with power-ups and all these kinds of things. But the thing I think is most interesting about it is the premise. You are trying to destroy the Japanese fleet and destroy, like in Tokyo, and this was made by a Japanese developer. I can't even imagine an American company making a game where the purpose is to destroy America. But that's what it is. Kind of interesting. Now, all of these games tell the story of a young Miyamoto and Nintendo as it began to rise to dominance. It's kind of cool that they tell a story and that I got them all at the same time. I don't think this will ever happen again in a pickups video like this, where I get this particular combination of games that there's something to say about each of them, but they also tell a story of development and evolution. It's very interesting. Really, this story all begins with Donkey Kong. Now, there's a lot to say about this. We know about the programming limitations and how Jumpman's features were really a necessity because of those limitations, giving him a big nose and a mustache and overalls to distinguish his arms as he walked. That we know about that. You know about the Universal lawsuit where they tried to sue Nintendo over the use of the word Kong and ultimately lost. We also know that it had such huge arcade dominance, and it really propelled Nintendo. My friend Tyler from GenerationGapGaming has a good video where he talks about Donkey Kong's dark secret.
This was the last straw for ITC. They sued Nintendo in 1983 for 580 million yen, which is around 92 million US dollars, for copyright infringement since Nintendo didn't own the original Donkey Kong code.
Now, the NES port is decent. You know, it's good. Way better than the Atari one that I originally played as a kid. But it is missing the Pie Factory level, so it is truncated in that way. But it's still really enjoyable if you like Donkey Kong. This is a great way to play it. Another interesting note is Donkey Kong's connection to Popeye. Now, this came out after Donkey Kong, but originally Nintendo was trying to secure the Popeye license. They wanted to make a Popeye game. They couldn't, though. So instead of making Popeye, they kind of retooled those characters. Instead of having Brutus or Bluto, you had Donkey Kong. Instead of having Olive Oil, you had Pauline. Instead of Popeye, you had Jumpman. My guess is if they had got the Popeye license, that Donkey Kong would have played and looked much the same, but have been the Popeye characters instead. But anyway, about the game itself, I really enjoy Popeye. To be honest, I like it much better than Donkey Kong or Junior or Donkey Kong 3. You're collecting hearts or music notes or the letters to the word help that are falling. You gotta collect enough of them to end the level while not getting hit at all by Brutus or Bluto, whichever one it actually is. I don't know. Isn't that the same guy? I don't even know if he's the same guy. He might be a different guy. Donkey Kong Jr. is actually a team effort between Miyamoto and Sakamoto, which is really interesting to have those two designers work on a game like this. Obviously, it's the sequel to Donkey Kong. I think in many ways it's better than Donkey Kong. Something I think is really interesting about this is just the premise of flipping everything on its head, where Jumpman, or now Mario, is actually the enemy, and you're playing as Donkey Kong's son trying to rescue your dad from the evil Mario. Also, interestingly, and I'm sure many of you know this, but this Donkey Kong Jr. ends up growing up to be the Donkey Kong from Donkey Kong Country, and that makes Cranky Kong, turning that thing at the beginning, actually the original Donkey Kong. Now, I should mention here Donkey Kong Jr. math. This wasn't part of the trade, but my friend Chris, he saw a really good deal. It's normally an $80 game plus shipping or whatever. He saw a really good deal and he sent me some information about it. I ended up getting it with this great deal. Now, it's one of the worst values in gaming. Like, for what you actually get for $80, this is terrible. I mean, there's some bad values, but this one's pretty bad.
As a true Grail game will bring you life, a false one will take it from you.
Okay, it's not really a Grail game, but as far as black box games go, this and Stack Up are the grailiest games that you're going to find. Now, the game itself, I mean, it's bad. Basically what you're doing is Donkey Kong's got a number above him, and then you're navigating as Junior to collect numbers and signs, operations, in order to add or multiply or divide or subtract to that number above Donkey Kong. It's really bad. My guess is the real purpose of this was just for Nintendo to prove, as it was launching an entertainment system instead of a video game console, that this was an entertainment system and that it had educational value. It's for parents, because kids sure as heck didn't like it. Now, Donkey Kong 3 is actually really enjoyable. You play as a character named Stanley, not Stan Lee, but Stanley. And he's got like a little, what do you call that, little pump thing? He's squirting some kind of bug spray. Donkey Kong's trying to get like bugs to fly down and steal your flowers, but Stanley doesn't want you to steal the flowers, so he's spraying and killing these bugs. Meanwhile, you're also trying to push Donkey Kong up and knock down a heavy-duty spray can where you can actually blow him to smithereens. I kind of wonder why they didn't just use Mario. Why make Stanley, who never appeared in anything like ever again? Why not just use Mario? I mean, he can do everything else. He might as well be a botanist too. Mario Brothers, not Super Mario Brothers, but Mario Brothers is really like a key evolutionary link between Donkey Kong and Super Mario Brothers 1. You see so many of the ideas really developed here. And what's interesting about this, first of all, is that Mario now can jump high and fall. That obviously is really important for Super Mario Bros. 1, but in Donkey Kong, if Mario falls from any height, he's dead. So that was a debatable thing. Can a character fall? Well, this game is the one where he first gets sort of superhuman abilities. They looked at his character design and thought, man, he looks more like a plumber than a carpenter from Donkey Kong, and so they added pipes and had the creatures coming out of the pipes, and just as they're developing it and him jumping and hitting things from below, which you see in Super Mario Bros. 1, well, it began here. And the idea of turtles came up because if you hit a turtle, it could easily flip and land on its shell for you to go get. They thought that was an interesting concept. But those turtles obviously become a very important part of the Super Mario Brothers series. But it all really started with Mario Brothers. Now, this game, I mean, I first had it on Atari. I loved it back then. I love it on the NES. I love the two-player co-op, just working for each other and against each other. The introduction of the POW block. There's so much to say about this game, just as its own entity, but also as its missing link evolutionary existence, if that makes any sense. I think it does. Now, before I talk about Super Mario Bros. 1, I want to talk about these three seemingly unrelated games. But you're going to see they actually have a connection and a tie-in to Super Mario Bros. 1. Excitebike was actually a launch title developed by Miyamoto. Now, it's kind of a basic gameplay. You have one button that accelerates and another button that accelerates faster but causes you to overheat. So it's really about managing that extra acceleration and you know, finding things that will cool down your engine and hitting the jumps just right. But that's pretty basic. The thing that's probably most notable about it is the programmable nature. And once again, just like Wrecking Crew, you can't save the levels you make, but man, wasn't it fun to make them? And I'm sure everyone used a lot of letter M and a lot of letter H, because that just made it a lot more fun to hit those jumps. Now, Kung Fu is actually a port of Irem's Kung Fu Master. But Nintendo obviously did something right, because it sold 3.5 million copies. And anyone who was around at that time and played early Nintendo games, they remember Kung Fu. It may not be everyone's cup of tea today, but oh my gosh, what an awesome little game. So many nostalgic memories with Kung Fu. So Ice Climber is a either single or two-player game where you're trying to climb ice, where you're trying to climb mountains. There's 32 levels. You're trying to get to the top. You know why? Because a condor stole your vegetables. Like, you can't make this kind of stuff up. That's a really weird premise. But the game is enjoyable. And as I was playing it, every time I jumped, I heard this sound effect, and it was eerily familiar. So then, what do these three games have to do with the birth of Super Mario Brothers? Miyamoto has said in interviews that his work on Excitebike and the port of Kung Fu actually helped to inspire this. They were making these new type of games they termed athletic games. They were side scrollers where you had to jump and avoid obstacles and all that kind of navigation. But that new playstyle, they were really happy with it, and they felt like they had really created it. And they wanted to push it to something new. Meanwhile, Kazuaki Morita, I think his name is, he was the main developer on Ice Climber. He said that his work on Ice Climber and that jump sound effect, you can see some similarities, that really helped prepare him to be the lead programmer for Super Mario Bros. 1. Super Mario Bros. 1 was not originally going to be a Mario title. It was just a generic athletic game. But when they saw the success of Mario Brothers, they decided to bring Mario and the pipes and the characters, they decided to bring that into the game. And then when they came up with this idea of a mushroom that would make you big, that superized idea really cemented that this would be Super Mario Brothers. And then all the secrets and hidden one-ups and hidden blocks and pipes and warp zones, all that other stuff that makes this game amazing. It blew the lid off of Donkey Kong and Junior and Donkey Kong 3 and even Mario Brothers. This took everything to such an extreme level that it revolutionized what video games were and what they would be going forward. Of course you have this game, but you need to love it. Like, buy it flowers and take it to dinner. It needs that kind of love and affection. And so because of that trade and previous pickups, I have every black box game except Stack Up. I don't have Stack Up. So right now I just hold my hand in the air like an idiot. But I'm going to find it, and when I do, I'll be able to say, side quest complete. But for now, I just have to say, side quest incomplete.
We look like we're actually like the same height right now.
So this episode, I wanted to do something a little different because my buddy Curtis completed the entire Super NES collection. So how long did it take to complete this?
8 years. Now, if we...
I mean, when you were a kid.
If you really want to go back...
So it's been 8 years from about the time you decided.
When I committed to
okay.
Trying to collect all the Super Nintendo games, 8 years. It was 2011.
Wow. 8 years.
Yeah.
Was there a moment that, like... What was it?
It was my friend opened up his own game store in Los Angeles here called World 8. He basically, when they first opened the store, put all of his games up for sale. And he had all these like really good Super Nintendo games. Like I remember Secret of Mana was one of those ones I got. And it kind of just brought me back to my childhood and how I used to think like, oh man, I wish I could have had that game. Like one of the games I loved the most growing up was Turtles in Time. But I never owned it. But I loved it. I thought it was one of the coolest games. It was one of the best games to play 2-player with someone else. Never owned it. And I was dead set on getting Turtles in Time to fill that hole that I couldn't in my childhood.
Okay, so when I think about collecting, though, I mean, I made a video. I think it was my third video. And at that point, I was deep in collecting. I was approaching probably 300 NES titles at that point. I ended up getting up to over about 500, I think just past 500. But I've always thought of this collecting thing as almost the stages of life. Like when you first start, you got like this childhood stage and you got the middle ages when you're breaking down like, what am I doing? Do I really want to keep doing this? And then you have the final stages, which you've just finally reached. You've died now. You've finished and now you're dead. But so I want to ask you...
I'm in gaming heaven now.
Oh, there you go.
Surrounded by all my games.
You want to be buried with all your games?
Yep. I'm gonna, like in Sunset Riders when he's like, bury me with my money. Bury me with my games.
I'll do it.
There you go.
After this is over, we're going to do that.
Cool.
All right. So if you were to break it down, though, like, did you ever want to give up? Did you think about not doing this?
So there are 721 games, physical games in my collection. And I would say right around the 600 mark, I really had to sit down and be like, what am I doing? Like, what have I begun? And I was far enough in that I'm like, oh, man, I have to finish this. Like I'm so deep. I'm in too deep, and I don't want to let myself down. I set this goal. I don't willy-nilly just make goals in my life. If I make a goal, it's because I am going to achieve it.
And so in the end game, what do you think helped you finally get there?
Friends. Yes, because you get down to the end. I don't think we talked about this yet. None of these games, I had a rule when I started. to not use eBay.
Oh yeah, that's a huge caveat because I don't know anybody who does that.
Yeah, you want to cast a wide net when you're trying to hunt down all these rare games. And the wider the net you can make, usually you do that with friends who are far away or in different areas that can check their local places.
And it seems like in that last stretch when every lot you would see, you've got almost everything, if not everything. I mean, we went to so many conventions and we'd look after Ben, and I'd be looking with you, find nothing, because you only needed 20. Like, you're not going to find anything you need.
With the relationships that I made with store owners, as people in the gaming community who wanted to help me out, I got a lot of, I guess what we would call bro deals.
Yeah.
A lot of bro deals.
You were so close that I wanted to help you finish it. And I know other people, other friends, they wanted to help make it happen because we knew you were almost there. And like the closer you get to something like this, people rally around you. And so everywhere I went, I wasn't just looking for me. I literally, every single store I went to, I had your list of those last 20. I went to Florida. I looked through everything. I met some guys who did have some of those things.
Florida?
Oh yeah, that's where I got Fatal Fury Special. Yeah, like so many times near the end, I just wanted to help you out. And it was really cool. Like, on NES Pursuit, we were able to film when I got you the Super Turrican 2, and you helped me in return to get all those black box games. And so, I mean, a lot of times with this collecting thing, it's not about spending money even. It's just about good trades and helping each other out. Having done this whole thing, do you have any tips?
Know your prices. I mean, I think this is stuff that people know, but it's good to have a little refresher. Know your prices. I didn't use eBay to buy any games, but I frequently, and I mean frequently, checked eBay to get the current prices that games were selling for. Especially with video games, they're constantly fluctuating. You get one YouTuber talking about a game, and suddenly it goes from $30 to $100. It's crazy.
I don't trust price charting.
No.
eBay, sold.
eBay, for sure. I would also say, don't be afraid to ask questions. You go into a game store or anywhere, yard sailing, you're everything might not be displayed. There might be some treasure that's out there waiting and someone just forgot to put it out, or it just came in, it's in the back room. Don't be afraid to ask these questions. The worst they can say is no. Like, who cares?
Right.
They tell you no, whoopity-doo. Well, every once in a while, they might tell you yes. And then you might find yourself with a Sunset Riders or a Earthbound or, Chrono Trigger, something great. And absolutely, make friends. Be nice. Be nice to everyone. Because the more you have people supporting you, the better deals you're going to get and the faster you're going to complete that set that you're going for, or collection or whatever.
I am so stoked that to actually be here on the day when Chris brought you the final game you needed.
It happened.
Actually see that happen.
It's happening. It's happening right now.
This is what you're looking for? You ready?
Look, I don't really have a game room. I don't have a cool place that I can
Game boxes.
They were literally in boxes in my closet, and they have been accumulating there for about 8 years. I've never seen them all together like this. I've never done that. And we were setting it up, and it was kind of neat. It was like, and we kept pulling out more, and you're like, my God, this is huge.
3 of us setting it up, and I don't know how long it took, but it was over a half hour, I would think.
Yeah. But yeah, it was stunning. And to talk about that last game for a moment, I knew we were going to get it on camera. I wanted to get it on camera the first time I saw it. And there is this moment where I was just kind of like
you literally paused.
I paused. I
didn't
had to
say anything. You were speechless for the first time. I think I've ever seen you speechless.
And I just let out this sigh of relief, and it was like, I'm done. I didn't expect that. It was really weird.
No, it really was there.
Yeah.
Like the shot
Have some water?
is the first time he ever saw
Legit.
the last game.
Yeah.
And you paused.
Set complete.
Yeah, I didn't know how I was going to react, and I was kind of like, I don't know, I won't say I was like emotional, I wasn't about to cry or anything, but it was like, this weight,
Yeah. Wow.
I wanted to thank William from Massachusetts, who after the last episode reached out to me, and he said he had an extra copy of Firepower 2000 and Darius Twins manuals, and he sent them to me. So, dude, thank you so much.
And I was at a convention not that long ago, and my friend Matthew Bandy came up to me and he gave me Uniracers, which I didn't have, so thank you, Matthew, for adding to the collection. Uniracers is a game that I used to play with my son all the time. You're on like a unicycle. It's really fast with lots of loops and little jumps. It's got a really unique feel and style, and it's an awesome, beautiful game. If you haven't played it, you should play it. It's a good game. And then while I was on the East Coast, I was in a GameStop, and this guy Oscar came up to me and he bought this for me. I have Gutsman and Cutman, but I didn't have the Fireman variation of this, and this is really cool to have these pixelized Mega Man characters from Mega Man 1. But anyway, thank you so much, Oscar, for reaching out and doing that for me. You didn't have to, but it means a lot. I hope you learned a lot about the history and development of Mario, from Donkey Kong to Mario Bros. 1, from those black box games. And I also hope you learned some tips about the highs and lows and got inspired about continuing your collecting. Anyway, thanks for watching.